Hey y'all, how's it going? Get this tech together. I hope you're well. Hope you're having an amazing day. I am Dr. Tammy, strategist, consultant, educator. I help you move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. And you have just entered another episode of Dr. Tammy Talks. And this is a day where we just come, have conversations, and talk about those things that help us move in the direction of more, help us to prepare for what's next. So I'm so excited that you have either joined me live. And if you have, say hello to the comments. Tell me where you're joining me from. If you're on the replay, I want you to do the same thing. And definitely share this out. Please share it with someone who may be interested in my perspective on how we position ourselves for more, how we position ourselves for the future, how we position ourselves on this journey that may have some interruptions. And today's topic is in between times. If that's not enough, I'm just going to pause right there. So definitely say hello to me. If you haven't gotten your drink, get your drink, have it handy, and let's just talk. So I hope that you have your thumbs ready and you are ready to chat with me, to share a little bit about your insights, your perspective, because this is a conversation. So I hope you will, you know, share with the audience and myself some things that you think on this topic in between times. I'm gonna sip on that. Grab yours. Get there. Come join me. Come have a seat. Hello, Leticia. How are you? So let's just say I'm so glad to see that my LinkedIn comments are working because they haven't been coming through. So I'm so glad that's happening. So let's talk about in between times. So I was on social media scrolling, and as I was scrolling, I saw a post that was about in between times, and I thought, y'all know how I get my topics. That's kind of how I get my topics. Something sparks, and then I have my own idea of what that is, and that's where it comes from. Whether it's on my podcast or here on Dr. Tammy Talks, that's kind of where I get those topics from. Is from just my conversations, my connections, or just reading, right? Reading something or hearing something. So I was looking at that and I was like, I was looking at that and then I remember, wait, I remember Ayala Vincent has a book. She has a book in the meantime. But I was really stuck on, So of course I have read that and explored in the meantime. And then I was thinking in between times, right? Because I think in the meantime, they both mean the same thing. But I think in between times, there's just I just found that a little more profound in the way that I was thinking about it. So when I think about in between times, initially I thought, oh, of a show, there's typically intermission, right? You have an intermission during that time. It's a little short break. It's short break. So stay with me. In between times, right? So it's an intermission. There's a short break when you're in a show or you are you in between shows or there's a play. I've been to plays or different shows, and there's usually like an intermission from part one, part two, depending on where they put it. And that's the time where you just take a short break. You can, it's a play time for the whoever's in the play, right, to rest. It's a time of rest. It's a time when you can get your snack, right? I call it, you take your bio break. Y'all know what I mean. You can stretch your legs. It's a time when you can, just walk around and move and just do something different for a short period of time. Very short, right? Usually it's like 15, 20 minutes. Typical intermission is about that. Some may be longer depending on the length of the show and what's going on and all that good stuff and the transitions within the show. But I was thinking about in between times is this time where you can rest, where you can just take a moment and take a breath. And I think that some of us in our life, we are in between times. Some of those in between times are just the ebbs and flows of life, right? But some of those in between times are actually forced because of something going on in your life. And you're moving, you're grooving, you have things, you're moving, you're shaking. I know about that. And then then something happens. Something happens in your family, something happens in your life, something happens with you. I know last week I was talking about my diagnosis. So sometimes some of those things happen. So even though you're moving and grooving, you're either forced or it's a good time to just take a break and rest, take care of yourself. And I think of those intermissions, those in between times, as times when you can really invest in self-care, right? And really reassess and reflect. Y'all know I'm big on reflection and um, this idea of adjusting, right, to what is and what will be. And so it's a great time for that in between times. Take a sip. If you are in between times or in the meantime, so you may in between times. So we're going to talk about what we do in the meantime while we're in between times. I'm going to take a break and sip. So when I think about in between times, I think about in between times, there's usually action before and action after, right? There's action on either side, but in the middle, there's this time for rest, for a break, for things to just kind of be. And so when I think about in between times, and if you're at a point where you're in between times, this may be a good time for you to just take a step back. And I like to talk about pausing. And I even have a quote in Reap More 76 Seeds for this season where I talk about the pause and some of the things you can do in the pause. So if you have that book, check out that seed. I wish I knew the number. I should have looked it up before the broadcast. But I think about a pause and a break. Those are necessary. Those are necessary to propel us for what's next. And my platform, my byline is about move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. And in that preparation, even though I think about the action and the movement, you have to take a pause. And in between times, that means there was action, there's that pause, that rest, that time to chill out. And then there's more action. So I want to just say that if you're in between times, if you feel like nothing's happening, if you feel like, oh, time is frozen, things are just not, maybe you even have this broken feel like you need to fix something, that something's not right because there's no action, you may be in between times. So let me see what the comments say. Yes, in between times. Words that begin with intercession, and intermittent fasting, interested, interfere. Yes, all of those. Oh my goodness. Those are perfect, perfect. Yes. And those are things that you do in the meantime. What do you do in the meantime? So pause on purpose. Exactly. And I'm one of those that sometimes I don't get the message the first time. So then there has to be this brick or something that falls on my head that tells me to. And I say that metaphorically, not literal brick, but sometimes I have to be positioned in a space where I can pause and doing that pause on purpose and being intentional during the pause, right? During those times of break and rest, during the intermission, in the in between times. So when we're thinking about what is next for us, if you feel very unsettled, and typically those are times of transition. And so when you're in times of transitions, you typically experience restlessness because you think something should happen. You want something to happen. You're really like needing, guilty, something to happen because it doesn't feel like anything is happening. But I want to reassure you, even in between times, there's something happening. There's something that needs to happen, whether it's downloads, whether it's you processing information, whether it's you getting other tools for your journey to help you move forward. So, in between times, there's something happening. So, in the meantime, what I encourage you to do is one, rest. And I love, and I don't know if y'all read the book, but there is a book called Rest is Resistance. And so that's a great book. And it's all about this NAP ministry and how those times are really, there's something happening. Those are times that you need. It's self care, it's all these things that we're talking about as it relates to in between times. So, in the meantime, rest, take care of yourself, and be intentional. I find that, I am one of those people that always have to be moving and shaking. There's always something going. My brain is constantly turning. I'm always turning over things and looking at things differently. And there's something happening. But I will say that last year, when I was out and I had taken a pause, I was on my break for my self-care and I had my surgery. What I found is I was at home healing. I was at home just being still, right? Being still, laying like broccoli, just doing absolutely nothing. But even during that time, something was happening. I was getting emails, invites to speak and do some things. I was getting requests to serve on panels and boards. I was like, all the work that I did before that intermission, before that pause, and before my in between time, the work that I did, I started to really see it. And because I was on my break, because I was on my pause, I was really able to take it in. I was really able to see, like, oh my goodness, my work is not in vain. There is something happening, even when I think there's nothing happening. I've gotten more requests to do things. I was honored. People that typically ignore what I do and really don't understand what I do, nor try to figure it out. They just say, "Hey, that's that lady that's always on YouTube. That's always across my feed." Even some of those people who I would put in that particular bucket, they were reaching out to me. It was amazing how things were happening. So when my pause was over, when my in between time was over, y'all, I was booked and busy. I was booked and busy. Did I say that? Which means there was action happening afterwards. But I needed that time to pause. I had to take the break. One, I could really absorb my wins. I could really celebrate the work that I've done because I saw things happening and coming into fruition that I've been working for 7, 8 years. It was finally happening, and it was happening in a time when I physically couldn't do anything because I was healing. However, physically healing from the surgery. However, these things were happening. So we have a question. How do you capture the downloads and not allow them to go stale or sour? Oh, great question. So y'all see me looking down, right? I'm looking down. I got my book here. So one, I am so much an advocate of writing things down or capturing them, whether it's on my device, right? And I have to record it, me saying it, depending on the situation, or type it in there. But I prefer to write it down. I prefer to write it in a journal. So I typically journal. I have the playbook as well. So, Playbook for Planning, Living, and Purpose. That's a great tool for those of you that have it, for you to use that. I also usually keep something little like this with me so I can write those down. So, when I have an idea, even for this today, I had in between times, duh, that's in between action. Like, I just experienced that. And I was so restless. I was so unsettled. How do I share that with others? And so I just started writing it down. So I have my little notes. It'll probably be more organized and more together on the podcast if you listen to that. But for now, That's kind of what I do. So I keep my little books next to me wherever I go. Like they're always with me. And I know some people like I don't have one here, but some like those little pads, those smaller notepads. I write too huge for that. So I typically have more of a journal. That way I can keep it and then I label it. So in there I label it. If I think it's a podcast episode, I put podcast. If it's a Dr. Tammy Talks conversation, because I want to get your feedback, I want to hear what you say as I'm developing and thinking about ideas, and we're going through this journey of life together. I'll put Dr. Tammy Talks. If it's a article that I'm working on or a book that I'm working on, and I have like four. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll talk about that in another episode because that's a whole nother process. I'll even put on their page, I'll say book or whatever. You can even see, I don't want y'all to read them. I guess you can read them, it's okay. But let me hide this one because this is one that's in development. But I actually put post-it notes and I say, what is it? Is this for the next seeds book? Is this for what is this other one? If I have like apps or things come to me, I'll put that. If I have an idea for something else, and I'll just flag it. Like y'all, I love highlighters. I love post-it notes. Not to be a brand thing, but I say that generically. But I love the little sticky notes that you put on things. I love to organize my things. So in the process of my downloads, I don't organize them, but I do go back and categorize them with my highlighters or my sticky notes. So I will say that because when you try to organize things and, oh, if I have a download about this, I'm going to put it over here. If I have a download about that, I'm going to put it over there. If I have, everything goes in this book. It's a catch all book. And I know that. And then when I'm ready, when I'm in the space, the time and space to be able to move it to where I want it to really live, that's when I'll move it. So like my Seed for the Soul books, that's when I'll move it and I'll put it, if it's a read more book, I'll put it in that folder on my computer. If it's for Manifesting More, a playbook for planning and living on purpose, the second edition, I'll move it to there. So now I'm really showing my thing. So I even have sometimes I'll even draft out what I want it to look like. So I'll even put the templates in here. So I'll even do that. So that's kind of what I do when I do that. Now I will say sometimes it's 5 o'clock in the morning when that happens, and I'm not ready to get up because it's not yet time for me or my alarm to go off or for me to get up. And so sometimes I have to just have it by my bed. I have it close to me on my nightstand. And I just pull it out, I write it because then I can go back to sleep. If not, if my phone is charging on the nightstand, then I will type it in there. And maybe not everything that I'm thinking because it's 5 a.m. or 3 a.m., but I at least will type the idea, the general sense of what I thought about and put it in there. Now, I will say many of the things that will download and comes to you also, not only when you sleep, but when you're in the shower. Just saying. It just happens when you're in the shower. So sometimes it happens there. You don't have paper or anything, but I try to, when I get out of the shower, my book is usually in my room. I just write it down as soon as before I forget it, before it disappears. And so the second part of the question is not allow them to go stale or sour. So I will say, if you're like me, those can come like in a flood. Like sometimes it's a lot, but when I'm in between times, when things are kind of settled, and I'm resting and my brain is resting. Sometimes I'm doing mindless tasks. So sometimes it doesn't happen. But then other times, because I'm moving and moving and moving, in the in between time, they really come. So there's not an ebb and flow to when they happen for me. And I know that. So because of that, what I like to do is one, give yourself grace. Write them down, capture them. Don't expect you to bring all of them into fruition in the next week, right? That may not happen. Especially if it's an idea for a book or idea for something like an article or an idea for a project or a product solution for those of you who are into building tech things. It may not happen immediately. However, write it down. And then what I encourage you to do is I have a template in the playbook, Manifesting More Playbook for Living and Planning on Purpose. And in that book, there is a template where you write down your goals and you assemble what I call your board of mentors. You get those people or those organizations that can help you with that. You write those things down. And then you also do your 90-day action plan, right? And put some of those initial things. So once you do the goals and you organize them, prioritize them, right, with that particular goal sheet, then you actually decide which one you're going to work on, and you do that. So I encourage you to write it all down. Initially it's just capturing it all, but then not to let it go stale is to always be working toward that goal, that thing, whatever the priority is. And you'll have to prioritize. You won't be able to do them all at once. But what I like to do is prioritize them, my big goals, my little goals, and those that are professional development, self-development, self-care goals. And I put them in those three buckets. And I'm always working on one big goal. And that's what I'll do the 90-day plan with. Because the small goals you can do in probably a couple of hours. You can just check it off. Mail a package at the post office, check, right? So it may not be small. But typically my downloads are the huge goals. So those I have to prioritize and then create some action. So even though it may be one little thing, right? Move. My one task may be move your notes um, from your journal to the file, right? It may just be something small, and I think that that's where people get hung up because they want to do it all now. They want it all now. But just know, as long as you're doing something toward it, you're moving toward that action, right? You're moving toward the next thing. And some things you will forget about and you won't come back to them. If it's on your goal sheet, you'll see it. And anytime you check off a goal, you'll kind of go back to it and it'll remind you. But if you're not doing that, if you're not writing it down and you're not keeping track of it, then it could go stale. It could go sour, meaning I think of that as meaning you'll forget it, right? But I think what I truly believe that when it's time for me to do whatever that thing is, to achieve that goal, to address that download, it will come back. So in the meantime, know that something is happening. Know that you can still do little things to move you to the next big action, the next big thing, the next big event. And those are things that you can do in the meantime. And, I will say, like, during that time when I was at home doing nothing, that's when I realized so much was happening. And I was literally in my recliner. And I wasn't, well, before that, I have to change my thing. Before that, I wasn't a big TV watcher. And so at that time, I would sit there with my phone. I would have my journal because I would want to write down things that came to me as I was there. And I have my phone and I have the remote, and I'm just sitting there, like, really just healing, doing absolutely nothing in my eyes, when really so much was happening. So if you feel like you're in the in between time, if you're in between, something big has happened, you had gained momentum, something happened, then all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. All of a sudden things seem to slow down and stop. One, be aware. Two, there may be something else you should be focused on. Rest, self-care, just taking care of you, and maybe even reassessing what is next, because maybe that was sending you on a trajectory that you didn't plan on, that you didn't want. You realize that you were just following and allowing things to push you in a certain direction. And sometimes those in between times are a time when you pause and you take a break and you can reassess what's happening, so if this is something I really want to do, or I'm just doing it because people are asking me to do this. Is it because these opportunities are just coming to me? Is this something I really am passionate about? Is it aligned with who I am and where I'm going? Maybe, maybe not. And so that's what I encourage you to do. If you're in the between times, be still and know. And and take care of yourself. Really take care of yourself and capture those things that come to you, prioritize them, and one at a time. Because I really think that sometimes we think the in between times are forever. But as I said in the beginning, they're short. Now, when we talk about intermissions, that's 15, 20 minutes. In our life, it may be 6 months, it may be 3 months. I will say during my in between times, I still posted. One, I my situation is a little different. I knew I was going to be out, so I batched content. So I did a lot of recording and some things before I took my break. So many people didn't even know I was not moving and shaking like I was because I had done so much. I had saved so much content for when I was gone. But I still did those things I could do from my recliner. I still posted. I still read. I still did my goal setting. I was still being intentional about what I want to do. I was looking at some of my previous pages in my playbook, Manifesting More playbook. I was still doing some of those things that I could do from my recliner. So I was doing things. I just wasn't physically doing things. And most of us attach action with you physically doing things. But those of us who are creatives know that sometimes the action is here. And sometimes you need to create space for this to do its thing, right? For our brain to work, for our brain to allow things to transition and grow and to move us and to really give us what we need for that transition and growth. So I'm going to invite you to embrace the in between times and decide what is it you're going to do in the meantime while you are, because we're not going to wait. We're not going to wait around for things, but we are going to do those things that make us better on the other side, that prepare us for whatever's coming next, for taking in the lessons that we should have been picking up along the way that we missed because we were moving so fast. We're going to gather those. Look at those. I'm a researcher, so I love trends and patterns. So look at the trends and patterns of that and look at what it's really saying to you about what's next. Because when that next come, you want to be ready. You want to be ready. And I want you to be ready. So I'm here to help you on your journey toward more. I am Dr. Tammy, and this is Dr. Tammy Talks. And if you've gotten this far, please say hello to me in the comments because I see people here, but I haven't seen hellos in the comments. So please say hello to me. I will definitely go back if there's any questions that I missed, anything I missed, because I know not all platforms will post comments or send comments to me. So I'll have to go back to the native platform and look them up. So I will do that. But I invite you to join me here on Fridays. I will be here while you're on your lunch break, while maybe you are in your car. You can listen, don't watch, listen. Listen to it like a podcast. You don't have to see me. I'm not doing much here, like we're just talking. But I do want you to think about how are you moving in the direction of more and preparing for what's next. What are you doing? If you are one that finds yourself in between times, how are you gathering what you need for what's next? How are you capturing what you need for what's next? There's something next. Take care of yourself. Move around, stretch your legs, grab a snack, eat healthy. Maybe that's what that in between time is about for you to slow down and maybe just cook a good meal for once, right? Maybe it's just one day. Your in between time could be one day, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. But during that time, what are you doing in the meantime, right? To be intentional, to be purposeful, and purpose filled on this journey. I am Dr. Tammy, strategist, consultant, educator. Yes, my favorite thing, educator. I help you move in the direction of more and prepare for what's next. And if you follow me, check my timelines. I always got things going on. But if nothing else, connect with me. Connect with me. Let me pull that up. So that way, I want you to be able to connect with me. You can even go to my link tree and learn more. I have communities out there. I have a Telegram group that is currently free that you can join. So I encourage you to, yeah, just follow me. Follow me and follow C4C Global. Y'all take care. Have an amazing day, weekend, week, depending on when you're watching this. And I look forward to catching up with you very, very soon. Very soon. I look forward to that. Y'all take care. Bye.